AC Mirage was marketed as a return to form for the Assassin's Creed franchise. A nod of acknowledgement to fans that have been vocal about disliking the direction of the franchise with the last 3 games of AC Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla. A glimmer of hope for those that fell in love with the original games that focused on stealth gameplay and hiding in plain sight. While the newer Assassin's Creed games can be fun as open-world RPGs, I think most people would agree that they strayed far from what made the series popular in the first place. For all these reasons, AC Mirage seemed like a day one buy for me, something I haven't done for an Assassin's Creed game since Unity. While I wasn't crazy about Basim as a character after finishing Valhalla, moving the plot back to Baghdad for a seemingly more grounded story still seemed promising. I was intrigued to see if Assassin's Creed could become a franchise I loved to play again, instead of being a list of bloated games that I hopped on just to kill time. I had my mind set on giving AC Mirage a go at release, and even felt excitement for the new release for the first time in years. But suddenly, things changed. That change was the review embargo lifting, where reviewers were able to post their thoughts on the game prior to its release. I went through multiple different videos from people whose opinion I trust, and they all seemed to come to the same conclusion. Assassin's Creed Mirage just wasn't it. Common criticisms I saw were that Mirage played it too safe, that it didn't innovate on the classic formula, that it didn't do enough. I was hearing that the shorter, more focused story was appreciated, but the writing was just bad. That the combat was simple with only 3 buttons, and that you do the same mundane tasks you did back in 2007. Eavesdrop or tail targets for info, climb towers to synchronize, and then assassinate a target without much backstory. The consensus from reviewers seemed that this was not a game worth a day one buy, but rather one you should wait for a sale on or just skip altogether. I was disappointed to hear that the game wasn't all that I had hoped for, so I decided I would follow the advice and wait for a holiday sale. I held off for a few weeks, trying to occupy my time with other games. But as time passed, I just couldn't stop thinking about AC Mirage. It had been so long since I played anything that felt like old school Assassin's Creed, and I couldn't shake the itch that I had to give it a try. Not to mention the reduced $50 price tag made me feel like the game was already on sale in a sense. I'm not advocating that Ubisoft should have charged $70 for it, since, they would have loved to do that. But there are plenty of 12-hour games that charge $70. So I bit the bullet and decided to take a leap of faith right into 9th century Baghdad. And I am so glad that I did. To be clear, I'm not here to tell you that Assassin's Creed Mirage is a groundbreaking new experience that you need to play, or that all the reviewers got it wrong. I actually agree with most reviews I've seen, or at least I can see how they came to their conclusions. But after having played through the entirety of Mirage, I just didn't have the same conclusions. While I was playing, I could see why someone could feel like the story was an incoherent mess, or that the gameplay was too simple, just rehashing what we got in the original 16 years ago. But that's just not what I felt. The story was simple. You're mostly just working your way through a branching tree of targets. You tail someone for info, or you eavesdrop on conversations to learn more. And as you learn more, you find your target's whereabouts and then assassinate them. This is not a groundbreaking experience, but I genuinely enjoyed the simplicity of it. There is no big villain that you're chasing the entire game. The Order of the Ancients as a whole is the villain. As you progress through the story, you slowly sniff out their leaders, take them out, and move on to the next target. Not a glowing beacon of storytelling, but for me, I felt like I was part of the Brotherhood again, just trying to fight for power against who we came to know as the Templars. While I'm not gonna pretend like the story was actually good and everyone just wants to hate on Assassin's Creed, I didn't personally have a problem with the loose narrative guiding you to some classic Assassin's Creed gameplay. At the end of the day, I wanted to feel like an assassin. I wanted to feel rewarded for sneaking into a base undetected, slowly taking out guards as I get closer to my target, and actually assassinating my oblivious target, instead of doing 2% damage only for him to get up and one-hit me because I didn't grind out a bunch of underwhelming side quests to get my magical RPG number up. There's no denying that this game heavily relies on nostalgia, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. People love to say things you remember fondly are a result of you looking back with a pair of rose-tinted glasses, and that they weren't that good. But I'd argue that the things I remember fondly are things that were very good at the time, and whether they aged poorly is a different discussion. On the other hand, it was marketed as a return of the old Assassin's Creed, a game for fans of the series that are growing tired of the new Witcher 3 style games. That would have you believe that Ubisoft was looking out for players that feel neglected by the newer games and built this game from the ground up for those fans. If that were the case, Ubisoft would have earned a lot of goodwill, but that is totally not the case. This game was supposed to be a DLC for Valhalla, and it's much more plausible that Ubisoft at one point was like, hey, why sell this as a $30 DLC when we could sell it as a $50 full release? And that situation makes me a little more pessimistic about the product. Playing on your nostalgia for the original Assassin's Creed, Mirage is centered in Baghdad, and the city seems to have the same layout. You can only access the assassins' hideouts from the rooftops, which really brought me back to the original. They also brought back the notoriety system, which I really enjoyed. As you get spotted in restricted areas or seen doing illicit activities, your notoriety goes up. At first, some civilians or guards may recognize you when they see you. As your notoriety increases, you'll eventually be the most famous face in Baghdad. To lower your notoriety, you can either pay off someone to remove it with coins you earned from doing side missions, or you can sneak around the city ripping down wanted posters of your face. This mechanic makes the world feel more lived in and gives you an actual incentive to do side missions, as it's easier to just pay someone to remove your notoriety. The combat is also much closer to the original Assassin's Creed than what we've experienced recently. As I mentioned, it's only 3 buttons: dodge, parry, and attack, where you tap for a light attack and hold for a heavy attack. Combat is simple. You pretty much dodge when you see a red attack coming and parry and counter when you see a yellow attack coming. It's meant to be simple and only causes issues when you run into multiple enemies at the same time. But that is intentional. This game is focused on stealth, and combat is usually a last resort after you mess up your stealth, aside from a few scripted fights throughout the story. I know people disliked the clunky combat, but for me, I don't want to be sword fighting an army of guards while I cosplay as an elite assassin. I feel like the clunky combat is a fair trade for actually being able to sneak up and one-hit all of your assassination targets. On the surface, Assassin's Creed Mirage is an average game. There's no groundbreaking story that has you sitting on the edge of your seat. There's no shiny new combat system that they overhauled to feel fresh. There isn't even a new setting for the Assassin's Creed franchise. Everything in this game are all things we've seen before from this franchise, and I understand why many people can play this and tell you to wait for a sale or skip it altogether. But in the context of the modern Assassin's Creed franchise, where your playable character is the reincarnation of a literal god, or where sneaking into a base for a raid turns into blowing a horn announcing your arrival, I found Assassin's Creed Mirage to be a breath of fresh air. This game is nothing special when it comes to narrative, gameplay, or innovation, but this game is unapologetically Assassin's Creed, and I loved it for that. I really appreciate anyone that stuck around till the end of this video. I know Mirage has been out for over a month now and this video isn't really trendy anymore, but I felt like I needed to share my thoughts for anyone that found themselves in the same place I was. I was really interested in playing Mirage, and I was excited to jump in, but I let reviewers talk me out of it. I'm not here to tell you reviewers got it wrong and this game's a 10 out of 10, but even after I decided to hold off based on reviews, I watched some streams and still felt deep down that I would enjoy playing this game. At the end of the day, reviews are great to give you a feel of what a game may be like, but no one can tell you if you will or won't enjoy a product. After seeing gameplay and knowing that I'd like it, I decided to purchase the game at full price anyway, and I'm so glad that I did. If for some reason you're still here, consider dropping a like to help get this message out to more people, and maybe subscribe for future videos. I plan on continuing to work hard to get solid, consistent content up, so any support is greatly appreciated. But I've rambled on long enough. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Later.